At this time, I'd like to welcome today's presenter, Noah Gates. Noah is the Roadnet Telematics Product Manager at Omnitracs, and he will be sharing our session with you today. Noah?
Thank you, Terry. As Terry mentioned, today we're here to talk about the key benefits of GPS tracking and tracing. And I am going to present today just a little background about myself. I'm the product manager here at Omnitracs, responsible for the Roadnet Telematics product. I come from about 20 years background in automotive technologies, both at the OEM and aftermarket level. So been doing this for a while. It seems like a lifetime, but it's an interesting field and always keeps us on our toes. So as we go into this today, what we're going to cover is basically we'll briefly go over what is telematics, just to get a baseline, and then we'll jump into why GPS track and trace is important. And then we'll talk about what features that we can build on with track and trace that goes beyond tracking, that can add value. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what the future of tracking is, because there's some major things that are driving in the consumer industry that's going to drive some of the future of tracking within our industry. So after that, we'll do a quick Q&A session and answering questions that you have, and then we'll wrap up. So that's kind of the agenda for today. So let's just dive in. So if you take a look at telematics and you go to the dictionary and look at the definition of telematics, you're going to see something like you have on the screen here. It's a branch of information technology that deals with long-distance transmission of computerized information. Well, what does that really mean? And what that really means in today's terms is you're connected to your assets wherever they're at and whatever they're doing. That's really what we use telematics for, is to have that connection to our assets out in the field. And as we look at that, track and trace really becomes the foundation for what telematics is. Being able to track where the assets are at, what they're doing during the day, is really the foundation of all telematics systems that's out in the marketplace. So if we take a look at that, I'd like to take a moment to ask the audience, how many of you are using telematics systems today? And the reason I ask that is if we take a look at telematics has been out and in the marketplace since the early 80s. Now it's evolved quite a bit from then. In the early 80s, we were having to track vehicles and drivers with satellite technology because the cellular networks had not been built out yet. So we've really evolved since that time. So it'd be interesting to see how many of you have actually used telematics systems, either in the past or in your current position, to just see what the percentage is, because it's a growing percentage in the industry now. So as we see here, I mean, 71% of our audience is using telematics systems. 28% is not using telematics today. That tends to fall within the industry standards right now. I mean, as we look at it, the technology is becoming more commonplace. So let's dive into why track and trace is important. So why is it important to track the vehicles or track the drivers or track the trailers? And why is it important to know what they do during the day? And to understand this, there's some key questions that are asked. And those questions are, where are my assets right now? Where do my assets go throughout the day? How are my assets performing? If we take a look at these fundamental questions are actually the questions that drove the development of telematics systems in the first place. The ability to answer these questions is really what drove the need to build the first telematics systems. Now with that, there are the same questions that today we're still asking ourselves and still using telematics systems to actually answer these questions. So they're still very relevant today. One of the things that you'll notice on this slide is I use the term asset and not the term vehicle. And that's one of the big evolutions with telematics system since the early days until today. In the early days, everything was very much focused on vehicles, tracking my vehicle. As we've grown and as technology has evolved, now we're talking about tracking assets. And that's key because it's now not only vehicles, we're tracking vehicles, we're tracking drivers, we're tracking trailers, we're tracking cargo. And when we talk about the future trends later in the presentation, we'll see why that term asset's important, because that category called asset is growing as technology grows. So the question is, why are these questions important? And how these questions impact me as a fleet owner? And really the answers to that is, the answers to these questions really drive two key components. They help drive the control of cost and drive down the cost, and they help drive up efficiency, making the fleet more efficient. And how do they do that? Well, they do that basically because now you have information that allows you to actually see what is really happening with your vehicles, with your drivers, with your trailers. So by having that information at your fingertips, it does a few key things. One of the first things it does is it really drives a behavioral change. And one of the biggest behavioral changes it drives is in the drivers. Just the fact that the driver knows that there's a system in the vehicle drives a behavioral change, especially for those drivers that are doing behavior that you want to correct. A lot of times it is self-correcting because those drivers now realize someone is now actually has data that tells that they're stopping by the Bass Pro Shop for 3 hours for lunch. They stop stopping by the Bass Pro Shop for 3 hours for lunch. So those type of things, there's some automatic benefits you gain by just the change of behavior just by having the system. The other thing it does is it now puts information into the hands of the operations, the safety managers, the dispatchers, the routers. So now those people have the information so that they can help drive change also. So it helps, they now have the ability to help drive the operations to actually understand how to do their jobs better because they have actionable information. So by that behavioral change, we start driving down the cost, we start driving up the efficiency, and it really provides that ROI for a fleet, and was really the main driver behind the early adoption of telematics systems. Now, some of the other things it provides is it makes it easier to adapt to changes. So if you're out on the road and the driver gets stuck in traffic and can't make a load or can't make a pickup, rerouting or sending a new vehicle out, all this becomes very, very easy now that you actually have the ability to see where the vehicle's at, what the vehicles are doing, which vehicles are available, which drivers are available. By just having that information, it allows you to actually adapt to changes that happen, almost daily. So another big benefit, it helps drive down cost, drive up efficiency. The other thing that we have is, of course, when you have a breakdown situation or you have an accident, it makes it very easy to respond to that very quickly because you know exactly where the vehicle is at. You're no longer on the phone with the driver and he's explaining to you that he's out in front of some cornfield on I-81 and you're trying to figure out where he's at. So again, very quick to respond to emergencies, which again helps reduce the cost, helps with the efficiency, gets things back going and on the road as quick as possible. So if we look at this, let's take a look at Roadnet Telematics. So with Roadnet Telematics, our traditional foundation for Roadnet Telematics is really a track and trace system. Our system is set up where we bring in positions every 2 minutes, and those positions contain positions for every 6 seconds. So every 6 seconds that the vehicle is driving, we've recorded a position for that vehicle and bring it in every 2 minutes. What that allows us to do is it gives you a very granular view into the trace part of understanding what your fleet's doing and what the vehicles and drivers are doing. With that, we also bring in other data. So we bring in data such as the speed, the heading, we bring in the miles, we bring in the engine hours. So it allows you to also start getting that idea of what the vehicle is doing as it's as it's out and you're tracking that vehicle. So what do we do with that data? So once we bring that data in, we basically allow you to see current position of that vehicle, all the historical positions of that vehicle. We allow you to drill down with a map view to see actually exactly where that location is at. We allow you to drill down to the street level view to actually see the buildings and everything of where that vehicle may have stopped at. With that brings some other additional capabilities. It allows you to actually know exactly where the vehicle is at, and by putting in locations of known locations that are valid locations as far as your fleet is concerned, you can now track when the vehicle stops at an unknown location. Enhancing that a little bit further, you can actually set up restricted locations. So if you've got locations that you do not want your drivers or your vehicles going, you can set up restricted locations and you actually get a notification of when that driver is stopping at a location that you've restricted. So with that power, that gives you the ability to not just have to look at a map and look at points and view that route and view the track and trace capabilities, but allows you to actually get actionable data items. Now expanding that a little bit further, if you're using our routing and actually setting up routes in our system, you can now start tracking the vehicles compared to those routes. This gives you the ability to see where the vehicle stops that is unplanned. It also allows you to compare actual versus planned routing. Very powerful tool which allows you to see how your drivers are actually performing based on how you've got them set up to perform as far as from a route perspective. With this also, we allow you to set up exceptions. So you can actually set up based on that data that's coming in with those vehicles. If you have certain company restrictions for speed or you want to restrict it based on known speed limits, you can set up restrictions where you'll get notified if the vehicle is going over the speed that you've set those thresholds for. So all of these are enhancements to just the basic track and trace functionality that you have to make it where the data is more actionable, useful data versus just a lot of GPS positions on a map. As we start looking beyond tracking, so we've talked about that we bring other data in along with the tracking data, along with the position data. So the question is, what is beyond tracking? So we can take that data and do some additional things with it. And some of the things we do is real-time exceptions. So what we do is we bring in that, as we said, with speeding data. We bring in harsh events, so braking, we bring in idling. That other type of data that we bring in with the track and trace data allows us now to set up exceptions where you can start monitoring the driver behavior. So you can start looking at things that regard safety. So is that, while that truck is out doing his route, is that truck having too many harsh braking events? Are they having speeding events? Are they idling the vehicle too much? So all that type of data can be set up as exceptions so that you can actually get that data in, and you can get that via email or SMS and get real-time notifications. You can also set it up where it's just reporting. So now let's just go beyond just tracking where the vehicle is at, but starting to trace what the behavior of the vehicle is and how to really get a handle around how the performance of your vehicles, your drivers, how that's impacting your both from the cost and the efficiency standpoint. So beyond that, the other thing you can do is actually use that data and those exceptions and basically set up scorecarding. So scorecarding allows you to actually set up what is good behaviors and what is not good behavior, and allow you to score the drivers based on which behaviors you feel is more important as your fleet. So it may be you're very concerned about idling, so you want to set it up where it's based on idling and fuel consumption and things like that. Or you can set up a safety one where it's based on, speeding and harsh events. And this is an easy and quick way to allow you to identify those drivers that are performing within your metrics or better than your metrics, or those drivers that you really need to work with as far as coaching or as far as restrictions. So just another add-on enhancement to track and trace. The other thing that we provide is analytics. This allows you to take and look at data across a fleet and start drilling down to find a very detailed look at how your fleet is performing, and then drill down into exactly why there's performance criteria that's not being met, and find out where that's at and make corrective actions with it. So analytics applied to track and trace gives you the power to actually start, instead of looking at a vehicle, lets you start looking at a fleet or looking at a region, and start really looking at that higher level and then drilling down to the point where you get to that individual vehicle, versus having to go through vehicle at a time trying to find out which is your areas of concern. And then, of course, the power of bringing this data in as we can report on this data. So allowing reports to be generated that can be, presented to the drivers to show them how they're doing, or used as management reports. One of the key things with our system is we actually allow the scheduling of automatic delivery of these reports. So you can set up a report and have it come to your, email address, every week. So do that without having to log into the system and find the data yourself. It can be automatically set up to be generated, so that that you get those reports without having to be, spend a lot of time with the system. So having covered a little bit about the areas beyond track and trace that we can use the same data and kind of build off the track and trace functionality, what I'd like to ask the audience is, what is the most critical area for your operations? Is it safety? Are you concerned about, safety and compliance? Are you concerned about routing? Are there other concerns that you really are critical areas for your operation? We'd be very interested in learning about those. What we'll see is there's typically one area that is the bigger concern area for most fleets that drives the adoption of telematics systems. So So as we go a little bit further, let's talk about what is the future of tracking and what is the future of trace. And one of the things that you'll hear a lot in the media today is the Internet of Things. Well, what does the Internet of Things mean? Well, the Internet of Things really means that there are a lot of devices, technologies that are being connected. So they're connected to the Internet. So you may have a driver out in your fleet right now that may have 4 or 5 connections that we have. He may have a smartphone, he may have a smartwatch, he may have a Fitbit. Just the other day I saw where they have sensors that go in your shoes to actually track, your step and your step patterns and everything for how much pressure you're putting on the soles of your feet. So there's a lot of technologies out there that are starting to be connected. So if you go back to our original definition of telematics and it being the connection to your assets, now all of a sudden you've got a lot of connection to your assets. And what is going to be important in the future is figuring out which connections are important and which connections bring value. And that's going to drive a lot of discussions and a lot of new data streams that we can take advantage of. So to give you a little example of that is health insurance and healthcare is a big cost driver in most businesses. Well, we start taking a look at the connectivity with, say, a Fitbit that starts tracking the driver's behavior. So it starts tracking, how many steps he's taken, how many calories he's burned, how much physical exercise he's gotten. Now we start having a data stream that may make sense to bring in, because now we've got a cost driver, back to our cost and efficiency, a cost driver that we can apply using that Fitbit and that data stream. So we've got a connection to track basically the driver's health that may tie into insurance systems and healthcare and employee health programs that is implemented by the fleet. So that's just an example of, we start having these other connections that could be tracking other data that we will have to take into account as we move forward in the future. So that's kind of where the future is going, is there's going to be a lot of trackable data streams, and the challenge is going to be finding which streams are actually the ones that bring value and information that is useful. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I will turn it back over to Terry for questions.
Thanks, Noah. As we are collecting some questions here, I want to go back and review the poll questions to the question that you had as far as like what is the most critical area. Just kind of wanted to leave that up there so that you can kind of see how it is for the audience, or what the areas are critical for us, and it seems as if it's routing based on the attendance today. So we'll just leave that up there. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and enter them into the Q&A, and we'll get to them. My first question is, what makes Roadnet Telematics solution unique?
Well, I think the biggest thing that makes it unique is, to start with, from a track and trace perspective, bringing in 6-second positions is something that's a bit different in the industry. That tends to be a lot more granular than most systems bring in. And then the ability for us to track into to connect in with the routing and be able to do actual versus planned routing is really a key benefit that our system has that most other systems don't.
Okay. The next question, can you view multiple vehicles at once on the map?
Yes. You can view as many or as few as you want. You can drill down to a single vehicle and look at a single route. You can pull up to view multiple vehicles.
Another question that we have, if I buy this, am I going to spend a couple hours a day looking at screens to find out what's going on?
No, and that's one of the big benefits when we talk about exceptions and we talk about the ability to automatically schedule reports. Really comes down to how much time do you want to spend with it. So if you just really want to know what actionable data and when an actionable something actionable happens, being able to set up the exceptions, being able to get that notification via email, get that notification via SMS is very powerful. Being able to schedule a report that you get once a day, once a week, just to see how everything is performing, it provides you the ability to not have to be on the system constantly.
What is the difference between telematics and mobilecast?
Telematics, when we start talking about Roadnet Telematics really is focused on the vehicle. It is black box. It is your true track and trace system. Where mobilecast is really focused on more your overall picture, so it brings into the driver and the behavior that the driver has also.
One of the other questions, how does this work with your back office systems?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
How does this work with your back office systems?
With host or ERP.
Like with your host or ERP?
So this, telematics Roadnet Telematics is part of the overall Roadnet Anywhere platform. So it's fully part of that platform, which brings all the functionality and capabilities of Roadnet Anywhere, along with the telematics functionality.
And I think one of the last questions we have here is, how do you use this in an ELD standpoint?
Noah, did you hear that last question? You might be muted.
Yeah, sorry. No, sorry. Yeah, I'm having connection difficulties. I missed the end part of that question. I heard, how is it important?
So
what was the question again?
So the path for ELD compliance as it relates to Roadnet Telematics and maybe some of the other solutions in the portfolio. So the question is just...
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so if we take a look at Roadnet Telematics is really your traditional telematics system. So it's very, very much with routing, track and trace, those types of capabilities. So it's truly a black box in the vehicle installed. It has modem. It allows you to track and trace your vehicle. Now, when we start looking at, if we start looking at compliance applications, we start looking at hours of service and the ELD mandate, that's the nice thing about the Omni family is we have the XRS solution, which is really geared towards, those customers that need hours of service and needs compliance. So that's kind of where having the Omni family of products and the suite of products becomes a real big advantage.
Okay, great. Thanks. This next question, is there a report for sequencing compliance, especially when drivers have 250 stops daily?
Yes. So as we go into and that really goes back into our routing capabilities, but there is specifically a timeline on the map that allows you to actually sequence and actually go through that sequence based on the time period, based on the locations that are coming in and the stops that are coming in. So you can walk through a day in the life of a vehicle as it's going out on its route with its location. And it is sequenced.
Okay, thanks, Noah. Just one last question. It's actually just if you could repeat the answer you had for the difference between telematics and mobilecast.
So I think the biggest difference is with telematics, where telematics is really focused on vehicle and the black box in the vehicle. So it's really around your track and your trace capabilities and everything. Whereas mobilecast starts bringing in the idea of the driver and your operations and your activities that happen during the day.
Okay, great. Thanks. So that concludes today's presentation. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you for your questions. As I stated at the beginning, we will send a link to the recording for this presentation in the next couple days. And if there are any questions we did not get to, we will follow up with you directly. And thank you. Have a great day. Thanks, Noah.
Thanks.